Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap, powered by Business Freedom Advisors, the podcast for business owners who want to grow their business and enjoy their life. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Landis, creator of the TriMetric tracking system and author of Balancing Act. If you're tired of chasing success at the expense of your health, your marriage, or your peace of mind, you're in the right place. On this show, we help you track what really matters: business health, life quality, and leadership performance, all in one simple, powerful system. Because when those get out of sync, everything else starts to break down. Our goal here is to help you align it all so you can lead with clarity, scale with purpose, and finally enjoy the freedom you've been working so hard to create. And if it feels like no one's ever shown you how to pull that off, this podcast might just be the missing link you've been quietly searching for. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap podcast, brought to you by Business Freedom Advisors. Here we are, Jeff Jacob and Scott Landis, the hosts today. And we're just the two of us today. Jeff, we're going to have a conversation. You know, it was interesting. I was on the website, businessfreedomadvisors.com, and we have a blog there. /blog, businessfreedomadvisors.com/blog. A lot of great information there. Recently, we released the 5 Freedom Levers series and go through that. And it's kind of just kind of an interesting thing. We have the 5 Freedom Levers. We have the 4 pillars of fulfillment. We have the TriMetric tracking, which is covering 3 things. So kind of a nice little 3, 4, 5 thing going on. The alignment operating system, all these things that help anybody who's like a founder, business owner, entrepreneur who's trying to balance all the things, and trying to be the best leader they can, trying to have a good quality of life while just crushing in a business. So we've been talking a lot on the podcast about the business health diagnostic, which is one part of the TriMetric. But yeah, just like, interesting. We've got 5 freedom levers, 4 pillars, TriMetric. This little thing I noticed. What's been on your mind?
7 metrics. You've always been into numbers, as have I, but in a different way, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's always everything that you have created is about metrics, really, and it's about
Mm-hmm.
health. But how do you actually measure that? How do you know that you're growing? How do you know that there's an area that is ripe for development? And it takes metrics for that. You can't change what you don't measure. What's that phrase you use for that?
What gets measured gets done. It's
Yeah, there you
different
go.
ways of
That's the one
seeing
I
it.
was looking for. Yeah. And but one of the things that we've known each other for decades now, and have been close for almost all of that time. And the one of the things that really kind of struck me about your systems early on in our relationship was the 4 pillars. And that's one of them that kind of gets overlooked a lot because it is so foundational. You deal with that right on in the beginning with people, but then it kind of goes away and doesn't get brought back a whole lot, but it is so foundational. I would be interested in you just talking about the 4 pillars a little bit. How'd you come up with that, and what does it really mean?
Yeah, yeah, and kind of with all of the things that you just mentioned, that they're all solutions to problems that I'm trying to solve, my own problems, trying to solve my clients' problems. But the big problem that the 4 pillars has been a solution for is, as it says, the 4 pillars of fulfillment. And we talk about this, Tanya and I, in our book Balancing Act. I think it's in one of the first 4 chapters. We dive into how we discovered the 4 pillars of fulfillment. But basically, it was coming from a place. I mean, we've been entrepreneurs since 2001. We had a lot of great success right off the bat. One of the first things I had to discover when I started business on my own outside of a corporate environment was goal setting, and I didn't have a very good structure for goal setting. But once I learned one, Brian Tracy was a great teacher for that. I went to a conference where he was, and I was just like, okay, 100% into Brian Tracy stuff, a lot of goal stuff, and I just went crazy for goals. And The process of goal setting and goal achievement is a pretty scientific process. It's basically a math equation. It's like where do you want to go, and then what's the kind of, like Tony Robbins calls it, chunking it down to the small pieces that get you there. You can boil that down all the way down to a daily habit and routine. So again, we talk about all that in the book, and it's a process that we've modeled, not invented, of goal achievement. Um, then we did really well achieving goals, but at the pinnacle of that achievement, we basically achieved this American dream in our mind, and we had the dream house and a couple of kids along the way, one with us, one along the way, and that's around the time that the real estate crash happened. And um, going through the crash and going through 7 years of success, and it was just like it was not perfect, right? Everything's a roller coaster, but just a lot to show for goal achievement. And then having such a strong crash, like we lost everything at the end of the day. Filed bankruptcy, had foreclosures, went from having many properties to no properties, and then so I spent some time questioning, okay, like I'm really good at setting goals and accomplishing the goals, but for what end? And then a couple years later, went to a Tony Robbins event, and it was a pretty defining moment for us. Date with Destiny, and before that, like 6 months before that, we were at the what's the other one called? Unleash the Power Within. So like a whole year, just like going all in on Tony Robbins stuff, and he talks a lot about fulfillment. He said something that really caught my ear, something along the lines of success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
Mm.
And that resonated for me. After a couple years of it's like, what, basically in prayer and sometimes yelling and anger at God, like, you know, what, what did I go, where did I go wrong? Being a victim kind of. But then when Tony Robbins said that, it's like, okay, that's where my pain is. Like success without fulfillment is ultimate failure. And that's what I felt. So I to make a long story short, around a year later, after I was like, okay, yeah, I'm obsessed with fulfillment now. Like success is great, goal achievement's great, but how do you actually have fulfillment? And that's where the 4 pillars of fulfillment came in. And around the time, Tanya was very much into her, right in the sweet spot of her health and fitness journey. And by proxy, I was doing that too. And we knew that vitality was kind of foundational for everything. We had figured out that, if you have your health or you don't have your health, then nothing else really matters. You got to focus on vitality, health, energy. The energy to give to your spouse, the energy to give to your family, the energy to give to your business, like that comes from somewhere. Looking for what energizes you versus drains you. That all goes into that foundational pillar of vitality.
Adderall.
And
That's what can help with energizing you, right?
Adderall, yeah. Well, that wasn't a part of our journey, but
No, I
I've
actually
heard good
got
things.
off Adderall because of talking about some of the health journey stuff and changing some of the ways, getting rid of a couple different things and getting off of it. And so, what you're talking about is bringing energy that's not just like from Red Bull or from Adderall or
Mhm.
something,
Good
but
point.
bringing a deeper kind of energy that really
Mhm.
comes from within you that is more than just physical, but it
Yeah.
very much includes the physical. Is that right?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where the word vitality wasn't a word I used previous, but vitality, it really rings to that. It's like, where does that vitality come from? When you see somebody who has like this vibrancy and this vitality, into older years, like where does that come from? There's something, like, again, Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. Like he's got a whole uh, formula that he does, on a regular basis to to drive that kind of vitality and that energy that comes from a place that is uncommon for most humans. I think most people, you know, don't even endeavor to go after this kind of energy that we're talking about. And a lot of people chase energy drinks and Red Bulls and medications. But true vitality, true energy comes from a different source. So that's what Vitality Pillar is all about.
Okay, and so before you get into, so I'm assuming that the four pillars are going to be the things that really lead to fulfillment because they're the four pillars of fulfillment. But
Mm-hmm.
before you go into that, um, I think a lot of people are confused by that statement of success without fulfillment or that phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how I think a lot of people get that, but that is really something that has to click for
Yeah.
an individual. And so for people that hasn't clicked yet, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but for the people that hasn't clicked yet, how can being successful not be fulfilling? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
possible for that to just be fulfilling on its own?
Yeah. Well, I think we hear stories about people that win the lottery and then, you know, essentially have no more money problems, but still end up not feeling successful or not feeling fulfilled, or at the end of the day, they burn out and, end up worse than they were before. Um,
Mhm.
we in the business world, we know about a lot of people who have um, had great success, started business, by all measures of what success is defined by, and maybe in perhaps an American dream or whatever metric you're looking at, or framework you're looking at. We see people that supposedly have success. You can see people in Hollywood, top actors. You can see people in government. You can see people in business that have achieved so much, but you find out later that they had horrible relationships. They were depressed. A lot of, if you look at a lot of successful people that have ultimately committed suicide, like, what's that? Like, something was missing, or tends to be missing when you achieve great success. Um, and so uh, there's a science to success, as I mentioned, but there's kind of an art to fulfillment. It's not necessarily something you can measure like math. There's a bit of a mindset, and the four pillars are really, I think of them as guardrails. Another um, mentor that never met me, Andy Stanley, um, who I listened to a lot of his podcasts, a lot of his teachings. He has a concept called a series called Guardrails. But the idea is like, if you're driving around on a mountain road, windy road, and you stay on the road, you're fine. If you go off the road and go down the cliff, you're dead. So the guardrails are there, typically. Like, if you bump up against the guardrail, like, that's going to mess up your car. You don't want to hit the guardrails, but at least it's better than falling off the cliff. So what are the guardrails that are there to keep you from falling off the cliff? Like, you want to stay in the lane, but we all, get off track, we get distracted. The guardrails are there to keep you safe. So the four pillars are really, for me, like, okay, what are the, after, again, thinking through and finally coming up with, okay, I think it comes down to these four things. That if you keep these in mind while you're setting goals, while you're achieving goals, while you're doing your working to be at the best version of yourself in a high performance mindset and daily routine, what are these things that, these guardrails that, if you ask yourself and you keep it paying attention to, will keep you from going too far? Because that's what happens, right? One of my mentors and partners we've talked about on the podcast before, Doug, who helped develop the TriMetric and the business health diagnostic. Um, he, well, I shouldn't share. I was going to say, okay, um, backing up, we know, executives at high levels of, business that and I know lots of stories. Another guy that's a friend of mine that's a mentor is um, well, anyway, so executives who have done really, really well and do the highest levels of achievement, but then they lose their relationship, they lose their family, and have regret. And they'll be the first to tell you, like, yeah, I needed guardrails. Like, I didn't have guardrails. I was married to the business, and I suffered the consequences because of that. So having the guardrails so the second one that kind of leads into relationships. So you've got vitality as the foundational, and then you've got relationships. And if you don't keep paying attention to those relationships, the ones that are most important, again, another Andy Stanley concept is relationship dials. There, you can turn up the dials on the relationships that matter, that serve you, that take you where you want to go, and you can turn down the dial on the relationships in your life that maybe are not serving you, that are taking from you, that are, the old adage, like, you're basically the sum or the average of the 5, 10 people you hang around with. Like, what are the ones that'll help you level up, and turn those up? What are the ones that are, you don't want to be the average of those, then you can turn those down.
Yeah.
So that I
I
just
think
said a bunch of stuff, so probably need some clarification.
Yeah, no, the going too far is really interesting, and it is hard to give examples of that, especially with other people and not give away their stuff. But and so many people we talk to, we have to be really careful with what we share,
Hmm.
and we protect that very carefully. You showed that well there. I'll use myself as an example then, because
Hmm.
which I probably do too much, but my wife and I were going to start a new entity together and a
Hmm.
new venture, and we were joining together in it. And we thoroughly believe that the most important relationship you have is with God, and then it's with your spouse, and then it's with your kids, and then her and I differ after that. But
Hmm.
she would put extended family, I would put the church. There's different things there.
Hmm.
But at that point, who cares? It's at that point, in my opinion. So, not who cares about the people. I mean, it doesn't matter what order you put them in at that point,
Hmm.
as long as you've got the first three in order. That's really going to be a foundation relationally for your life. But we were starting this new venture, and we came together and decided our order is going to be messed up for
Hmm.
3 months, while we get this started. And this entity is going to be after God for us.
Hmm.
And because we're going to have to spend too much time on it, and go too far for a certain period of time, and then
Hmm.
we'll readjust. And so then what happened was we forgot to readjust. And then it was getting, raw between us. And
Hmm.
so and then we said, what's going on? This is not like us. This is weird. And then we realized, oh, we haven't readjusted through a process of conversation. We realized we haven't put our priorities back in order relationally. And so
Hmm.
we did that, and we were able to go through a process of just healing that rawness and come back together to be one. Uh, and it transformed everything too. Everything went better because it was right for us to be there for that time. You know, have our relationship priorities in order. Uh, so anyway, that's really good, Scott. So you've got the vitality of the relationship, and then go into freedom, and then impact, if you would.
Yeah. So uh, obviously, freedom. Here we are, business freedom advisors. So freedom is what we focus on a lot, and um, that could be in freedom of location, freedom of time, freedom from your business. What it could be internal hangups. Like, what are the things that your triggers? What are your triggers? What are the things that set you off that you're like, well, maybe that's not serving me. So uh, whatever freedom is, the opposite of whatever hinders you, for what. And that's where I always bring in impact. The top, the pinnacle pillar of the four pillars is impact. It is what really drives fulfillment. And if you can find something that is near and dear to your heart, that you love so much that you would contribute to it, even if it didn't make you a cent, even if it didn't do anything else for any other needs, it just made you feel fulfilled by the power of contribution. The highest level of need is contribution, and that's what impact is. So if you have those kind of foundational things in place, but you don't have impact, you won't have ultimately fulfillment. And from a needs perspective, it kind of goes into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that concept of transcending the needs. Once you find that transcendence, like that's when you've hit the impact pillar. So the question that drives the impact pillar is, what is it that what's the problem in the world that you really want to solve, or what's the good in the world that you really want to contribute to, that just would get you up in the morning and make you excited, and it's purpose filled, and all the things that I would argue that you're probably wired, like God knew you before you were in the womb, before you were born, and had a purpose for you. It's discovering what that is. That's the ultimate level of impact. So freedom
And I
pillar
would
is
put that, oh, go ahead, sorry.
one last statement. So freedom
Yeah.
pillar is about what is it that's keeping you from being able to do the highest level of impact. So, that question will drive, what goes there in that guardrail.
Yeah, and I would say with that, it's not freedom to just be lazy. You used the example of the lottery winners. It's not freedom to just do whatever you want, freedom to be lazy, freedom to sit in the pool and drink margaritas all day. It's which is my dream. But it's not, if that's not actually fulfilling. Actually living that out doesn't lead to fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so therefore what the freedom is it's freedom. And I would put it the way I would word it, because we have mentioned God in here a couple times, which we don't always do, but I would say it's freedom to be who God's created you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a purpose for each and every one of us. There's a reason why each and every one of us are here. And whether you believe in him or not, this principle is still true. And that you have a purpose, you are here for a reason, and it's being free to be all of who you are meant to be. And that is where the impact comes, because it's you being free to truly be you and how you're gifted and impact the world in that way. And
100%.
that's where the fulfillment comes. That's how I would word that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and then just one thing to maybe tease for a future episode is the other component, that if you take these different components and you just have them without the whole ecosystem, it doesn't all work, right? But the alignment operating system is another key component of the entire system and process that keeps business owners in this place of like being their best version of themselves, having a high functioning business, having a great quality of life and relationships, and the four pillars. The alignment operating system is something that is easily illustrated by the story you told about you guys as doing that entity, and then like setting an intention in place, but then forgetting to come back to it. The alignment operating system is a 13-week pacing that keeps you from forgetting those things. Like as long as you follow the system, it'll keep you back. It'll bring you back to where you wanted to go in the first place, faster, more efficiently, more quickly. So maybe we talk about that on a future episode.
Yeah, it all fits into the TriMetric. None of it can work without each other. It's fully to its best. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Well, let's leave it there. Perfect timing, and appreciate your partnership, Jeff. Thanks for being on the show with me.
Yeah, man. Always fun to do it with you.
Thanks for listening to the TriMetric Roadmap powered by Business Freedom Advisors. I've been your host, Scott Landis. If you're growing a business but something still feels off, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created the TriMetric quiz. It's not a personality test, it's a powerful diagnostic tool that shows you where you're in alignment and where things may be silently slipping off track across your business, life, and leadership. It only takes a few minutes, and the clarity you'll gain is a game changer. Go to TriMetricQuiz.com to take the quiz now before the cost of staying stuck gets any higher. Until next time, stay focused, stay aligned, and keep building a business that truly supports your life.